Hey, this is Paul from the Coda community, and today I want to record a tutorial on how to make your doc usable by multiple people at once, so that each person working with the doc at the same time can see their own filters, their own piece of the data, and not step on each other's toes. Um, this is a very common request in the community, and it has been answered so many times in different threads, but there is no centralized answer. So with this tutorial video, I hope that there will be something that every time this question pops up, you can just reference this video and everyone can learn from it. Okay, so switching over to our Coda doc, I have a very simple sample doc, a table of leads, like some random data, 100 rows, so sales made to different people, which came from different sources. A different salesperson was handling this or that lead, and different stages, like not interested, sold, no answer, and all that. And let's say you want to have some sort of filter like by stage. And one of the approaches that you would do, you would create, and Coda made it super simple, just add an interactive filter, it creates a control, automatically creates you a filter, and here you go. You can like select nothing, sort for not interested, and so on. And everything, life is simple, right? But let's say there are two people interacting with this dog. There's like Paul on the left, Paul on the right, just two different accounts. Anyway, two different people. And like this person wants to review like all new leads, and they change the filter, and at the same time the person number one was working with this table, and the table just changed for them as well. So the thing with Coda is that all the canvas controls are just, there is one canvas control, and its state is stored in the doc, and its state is shared across all the users. So if there are 20 people looking at this doc, you change the control or the filter or whatever, it changes for each one of those 20 people, even if they were working on this table and trying to figure something out. And that's a problem. And yeah, what I wish for Coda is that there is this kind of checkbox that says make this filter just specific to a person looking at this dog. But for now, we don't have that. Hopefully they add this. For now, they don't add that. So we need to work around that in some other way. So what can we do in this case? We have like person A, person B willing to look at the data differently. And the solution number one is that you can simply duplicate the section like leads Paul 1, and you can make each person a separate section, a separate page. And if your team is pretty small, that's it. Like, you don't need to figure out anything more complicated than that. One person knows that they need to go into page number 1 and examine that for and use that as their own view of the data. And person 2 uses their own page, and they can interact with the data independently. This works as long as there's only a few people, and it's not a problem to duplicate the page for a few people. There's like 3 or 4, maybe the doc maintainers, and I actually do this for the cases when there's like lots of doc users, but we have only like 3-4 admins, and they need their own views to interact with the data in an admin way. But for end users, we do a different thing, in which I'm gonna show you in a minute. Another thing is this will not be a very good idea if you need this for like 2, 3, 10, 15 different pieces, like different tables. It will be not really a good idea to recreate the whole like bunch of pages. Well, you can do that, but there must be some better way, right? And the third thing is that, okay, you duplicated the section, but what if you decide that you want to maybe hide this column? The problem is that each view is individual, and if you try to change table like column widths or hide some tables, or maybe set up something differently, or maybe even set up conditional formatting right on this view, it will not be recreated in all the sections that you duplicated. Those function as totally separate, totally different views with totally different display settings, right? So that's another problem. It's not so easy if you want to change something to then propagate these changes across all the duplicated views. Okay, so what is the solution? And the solution is to create a helper table, which will have a separate row for each of the docs users. And that table will contain controls. And then we build our filters to read from those controls from the row that is like from the row that is assigned to the current user, which looks at the doc right now. Okay, it's easier to build than explain. I will build this now and narrate as I go. So we create a new page, because I'm always putting all the base tables on new pages. And helper tables, I call them with the prefix HLP, and I'm naming my tables the same way as I'm naming tables. I'm naming my pages the same way as I'm naming my tables. HLP users or HLP flows. I often call this thing a flows table, because originally I used this to store pieces of data across the flow. The user was going to page number 1, doing something there, then to the page number 2 and selecting something there. And over like 3-4 pages, I call this a flow. So I'm calling this table flows. Or it can be called users, or it can be called whatever, sessions. Well, I'm just calling this flows. New table, flows. Display column can be current user, and we make it of the type person. And there's person number 1, and there's person number 2. And so what was the thing that we wanted to? We wanted to filter on stage, right? Let's call it a stage and make it a select list of items from DB leads, stage, unique. And we have our control. Oh, and we make this a multi-select like the original one. Right. Now, instead of the filter of the control, we import the view of that HLP flows. We can call it like whatever. Usually what I'm doing is that I'm just hiding the title right away. Hiding the headers right away, hiding the grid lines right away, show the row button, of course, and I'm filtering this table to only show one row where user equals current user. And as you can see now, this person has their own view, like their own, the row number 1 is shown to person on the left, and row number 2 is shown to the person to the right. Person to the left selected these 2 options, person on the right selected these 2 options. So now we have separate controls. What's left is to, okay, we hide that, we don't need that, we can hide that. Regarding the column headers, I was too hasty. I usually keep them. What I do, I keep them to show the some title of what we are doing, because we will have more controls in a row. And another thing that I like to do is that on the original base table, I just make a new conditional format, which is true for everything, and I'm giving it a bit of shading so that all of that looks a bit like this, right? There's some visual cue for the user to go here so that they can click here and do something with that. So just to separate the table, the column header from the value itself. What's left is to write our filter, and for that we will be writing a formula. One more thing, to make it easier to find a row for the current user, I'm usually adding a named formula to just get a hold of a row that's like a row for the current user. So current user is, the named formula would be current user, and the formula HLP flows filter user equals current user, and since filter returns a list of values, not just one value, we need to unwrap that from the list and not forget the first. And now we can use the current user as a variable and read from this row reference. Right, so the filter will be current user stage or actually what I'm doing is that this row stage in current user stage. Oh well, stages. And there you have it. Just the solved rows with just the solved stage right here. Rows with just the new lead stage right here for another user. Two options, two stages, and the user number 1 unaffected by whatever the user number 2 does with their filter. Another thing that I like to do is that if you select nothing, obviously it shows nothing here. So I'm not just writing a formula like that, I'm writing a formula like this row stage in that. If stages is blank, current user stages is blank, or stage is in the stages. Or I can write it the other way around, current user stages contains stage, this row's stage. What this does is, if the stages selection is blank, the condition is true, and it's going to show all the rows in the table. And I'm usually calling this out in the header so that the person who's using the doc knows that if they select nothing, they will see all the stages, and if they select only the sold stage or only some stage, they will have the filtered table filtered just for that, right? And there's the trick. You can obviously add more things like filtering by sales person blank all, and make it a select list with DB salespeople. Multiple selections, ban Paul. The salesperson, we have a column that's hidden the reference, the actual reference to the, or on the other hand, we can make it like just comparing by text, not the references, but comparing them by text. Adding a filter, you need to wrap this one in brackets, and current user salesperson is blank, or current user salesperson contains this row salesperson. Well, we could omit this row thing. It's implied when you just type in the column. And don't forget the closing bracket. So here you have it, just ban and Paul for the sold stage, just Paul for the sold stage. If nothing is selected, all three salespeople ban, Paul and Alex for the sold stage, or just Paul for any stage. And this is all independent of another user who's using this doc. We could continue with that, add a source filter, add something else. I leave it as an exercise for you. There is one problem. Let's imagine that there is no row for another user, and it's a new user. So it's, okay, sorry for that. It's a new user opening this doc for the first time. So they don't have, they come on Coda, and what they see a blank table, nothing to fill in. So what they can do, they can click here and add themselves a row. This will add a row for them, right? There's option A. What I usually like to do is I make some call out and a button somewhere in the top saying, okay, to start using this doc, click here, but I guess I'll leave it for maybe another tutorial. This option, if you explain your users that the first time they go on this doc, they need to click here and a row will be created for them and they will be able to use these filters. Another good thing with this approach, so first, the first good thing is that you're super flexible with how you are setting up these things and tying them together with filters. Another useful thing is that you can make buttons which will populate these with some values. What I mean is that if you have a canvas control, you cannot edit that. There is no action that will let you, let's say I make an interactive filter for this, right? There's no way to edit this selection by clicking a button somewhere or doing something. What a user needs to do if they want to change the control, they need to go in here and manually change the control value. Like there is no reset capability or something. what this approach lets you do, you can create buttons like reset, and you can program this button to this row, modify rows, stages, make it blank, and sales person, make it blank. So even after you the interactive filter messed this up most likely. Need to remove this, and now it works again. So yeah, you can have a button which will reset the controls, and again, this will not affect the control settings for user number 1. So each person can click the reset button on their own. You can have presets. You can have it like not make it an empty list, but you can say just show, make some preset buttons saying show only the, okay, let's do that, why not? Show show new leads only, and this row, modify rows, stages, and we have a list right in the stages. So we need to wrap this in a list. And if I'm not mistaken, it's new lead, right? So we can have a button that just sets up the filters like you want them. New lead, reset, show everything, right? See the benefit. Another big benefit of this thing is that you can reuse this table of inputs across different places in your doc. Let's say you want to have, you duplicate the leads by source, and you want to make this table a chart. Why not? And let's say it's a pie chart grouped by source and the count of leads. Okay, nice chart, right? And if you did this with canvas controls, you will have a canvas control here, for instance, to filter the data. So let's say in this table you want to only see items by Paul, and then you want to go on another table and see only the chart for Paul. Normally that would mean you would have to create 2 separate canvas controls, have this one react to a separate filter, or you would have one control on this page, but you will not have it on this page. And if you wanted to change something in your setup, you would have to go back and forth to the page where the control is, change it, then go back to see the chart. And since these are all views of the same base table of flows, you can just reuse this section of inputs. You can, like, say, only show the new leads for all salespeople. And automatically here you can see the chart filtered for only the new leads by all people. You reset the controls, it resets both the chart and the table on another page. So reusing the controls, making them like universal in your doc, that's a trick to do that as well. And final thing, last but not least, when you create new separate drop-downs, new separate controls for each thing, it counts as a separate object. So you have like a separate control for stages, a separate control for salespeople. If you have multiple places where you want to have, well, you duplicate the section, you have essentially you duplicate the objects. In this case, this whole thing counts as just one object, like one table. This counts just as one object, one view, one object, one view, and each person counts just as one row towards the 1,000 rows goal. And you can have as many columns as you want, as many inputs as you want. Well, hopefully that's not a deal breaker for you, and it's not something that you will decide to whether to use this approach or not. Coda is totally worth paying for, even though I'm not paying for it myself since I'm a community champion. Oh, I shouldn't probably said that. But yeah, that's another benefit of this approach, even though I hope it's not the most important one. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the trick. And thank you for bearing with me, and see you the next time. Bye.